Killer Klowns from Outer Space is an interesting new take on the isometric horror multiplayer genre, and it's a great addition to the roster. It has a lot of unique differences, and not to mention a lot of charm that help it stand out. But, with all that said, this game is a little tough to figure out when you're just starting out. Whilst the game has a tutorial section that you can read that helps explain the basics of it, it can be hard to actually put it into practice. And if you're like me at all, reading doesn't help so much as having a visual aid like a video. So this guide will help you get started killing it at Killer Klowns. There are 10 people in each match, 3 clowns and 7 humans. When loading into a lobby, each player will be randomly selected to be on one side. You don't queue up as one team yet. The main objective of the clowns is to kill all the humans and grab cotton candy cocoons to power up their machines. And the main objective of the humans is to survive and escape via one of several escape routes. You have the bunker, the boat, the portal machine, and the blocked gate. These escape routes are marked by glow sticks, which will help you locate them, and they all require different items and steps in order to activate them. You can press tab at any point during the match to see which items and steps need to be taken for each of the different escape routes. The match is constantly on a time limit, as there is a countdown leading to a special event known as the Clownpocalypse. When that timer reaches 0, a cotton candy nuke hits the city, killing any survivors left in the town. When the match starts, you'll have no items, and an itemless survivor is a defenseless one, so your first priority should be to find and loot as many items as possible. There is also a meeting point you can find that will have some useful supplies, whilst also revealing the locations of all escape routes briefly. It's a good place to go, but remember that you have 6 other survivors on your team. Don't take all the useful items and leave your fellow humans stranded. Take only 1 or 2 items and leave. There are many different items you'll find scattered across the map. You can hold up to 4 items at a time and switch quickly and freely between them, but remember that the clowns can see whatever item it is you are holding in your hand currently. You can use this to your advantage though. For example, air horns are extremely powerful tools for escaping clowns that have you cornered, as it will stun all nearby clowns for 5 seconds. However, if they see you have an air horn in your hand, they'll know to keep their distance and use their ranged weapons on you instead of getting up close and personal. If you instead hold something like a hamburger in your hand, the clowns are much more likely to approach you thinking you're defenseless, and then you can use your air horn to stun them and escape. Whenever fighting clowns, remember, their big red nose is their weak point, not the top of their heads, so always aim for it when you can. Thrown items can be devastating if aimed well, as a hit to the nose will stun them, leaving them vulnerable to follow-up attacks from you to finish the job. Certain actions in this game, like running around, quickly vaulting through windows, and throwing items will make noises that alert the clowns to your presence, so you'll want to be as quiet as you can whenever possible to keep them off your trail. Additionally, when performing many of the tasks in the game, like removing cotton candy from objectives, hiding in containers, and installing items onto the escape routes, you'll get skill tests that show up. These are not uniform, and many of them will change up what button you need to press, so make sure you're paying attention to what the game is telling you to do and get the timing right. One-on-one, clowns will likely overwhelm you, so take advantage of your numbers whenever you can. Always try to stay near enough to other survivors that you can help them in a bind, while still spreading out to effectively find the items you need to escape. When you've been cocooned by a clown, you have 2 minutes to be rescued before you die. Humans can approach your cocoon and break you free, though it is timely and provokes skill checks. Or, alternatively, if you have a sharp item like an axe, you can actually use it to cut yourself free and get a second chance to escape at the cost of breaking the item. When it looks like you won't be able to escape or kill a clown that's attacking you, sometimes it can be better to simply accept your fate and let them wrap you up, and making sure to save the last of your weapon's durability in order to escape later. Even death isn't the end for humans in this game, so don't give up. When you die, there are mini-games you can do to unlock items that you can gift to remaining survivors or hold on for yourself. These can even include key items that will help them escape, so don't underestimate how useful this mechanic is. Humans will also have access to a one-time use revival machine once any survivor has died that will revive all dead players. But keep in mind that a cocoon survivor is not a dead one, so they will not be brought back. It could be worth it to wait for their timer to run out and then use a machine so that you get a full restore. If the timer is starting to get close to 0 and you still haven't made any progress opening one of the escape routes, fear not, you still have one last Hail Mary play you can do. At 30 seconds left, the twins will break down one of the gummy walls in their ice cream truck, and if you can make it there in time, you can escape. If you don't think you can escape the normal way, it can be a good idea to hide in the center of town with an energy drink on hand, and then make a dead sprint for it as soon as they pop in. Clowns are much more simplistic, as their two objectives are easy to understand and easy to carry out. They are also easy to learn, as their ability to fight isn't dependent on RNG like it is for survivors finding items, so learning the basics of combat with them is extremely simple. There are 4 generators that clowns can power up with cocoons, and as you do, they'll spawn helpful lackeys that will act as a sort of radar system, chasing after survivors and jumping on their backs if they get close enough. They also make a lot of noise when chasing survivors, so it can be really useful to get some up and running as soon as possible. When transporting cocoons, it's much faster to grab and throw them in the direction of generators than it is to carry them the whole way, and there are even some spots where you can throw them over walls to save yourself a ton of time. In the early game, when playing as clowns, it's best to focus on exploring the map and grabbing cocoons, as your abilities all start on a long cooldown, so even the prospect of fighting can be risky. Additionally, your team can only clown jump to locations on the map you've revealed once it's unlocked, so you want to try to get as much of it revealed as fast as possible. If you find an isolated survivor without many items on them, you can chase them down, but just be wary if you don't have any backup, as a group of survivors with 1 item each could easily gang up and bring you down. If you can bring a survivor down early, it's usually best to kill them rather than hook them, as you can't really afford to stick around and guard the cocoon after you hook them up, and having them get unhooked removes all the pressure you might have gained by downing them in the first place. As the match goes on though, it's often much better to cocoon survivors than it is to kill them, as the numbers decrease, it's much easier to keep them safe. Even if they spend 1 or 2 people to free one of your cocoons, that's time they spent not doing objectives, and time is on your side as clowns. As a clown, your weapons are strong, but your most useful tools are actually the abilities you unlock as the match progresses. Clown Jump lets you quickly traverse the map and cut off survivors your fellow clowns are chasing. You also want to use it to jump close to noise indicators, especially ones with exclamation points, as these are caused by survivors failing skill checks and getting jumped on by lackeys. It's also good to see what areas of the map haven't been scouted, and then jump on the edge of the fog so that you can move into those areas and scout them out for your team. It's got a fairly low cooldown, so don't be afraid to use it often. Laugh Out Loud, or LOL, is a great and versatile tool, despite its rather simplistic nature. You are actually invulnerable during the initial animation, and you can use that mechanic to your advantage to tank hits and even stuns from air horns if you time it right. This also makes it easier to juke attacks and bring down survivors in a direct fight, as it increases both your speed and your damage. As tempting as it may be, you don't want to use this at the start of a chase, because the speed boost you get is outweighed by the fact that your character is locked in place for a couple of seconds when you start using it, and that can be enough time for a survivor to break line of sight and disappear. Instead, you want to use it midway through a chase when your stamina gauge is about to run out, as the amount of time that you're channeling the ability for is enough for your gauge to fill back up a good amount, and the speed boost can help make up for the lost distance you had when your stamina gauge was recovering. It can also be useful to use when injured in transporting cocoons as a way to heal yourself up and speed up the journey of transporting cocoons. One thing to be aware of though, is that when using Laugh Out Loud, you can't use either of your other clown abilities. Hypnotize can be rather hard to land at times, but is almost a guaranteed down when pulled off. When using a survivor, they will walk harmlessly towards you until they button mash and break free, and this can take anywhere from 2 to 7 seconds in my experience, depending on how alert the survivor is and how fast they can button mash. Most times it's enough to guarantee a down on a survivor, especially if used around other clowns. Do be aware that you have to be fairly close to survivors to use the Hypnotize, and it slows you down quite a lot when readying the move, so only do it when close to a survivor who has no easy way to break line of sight and no obvious way to stun you. Speaking of, you will inevitably get stunned at times. Whilst you can mitigate the frequency by moving erratically when you see a survivor with strong tools and weapons, you can't avoid everything. When you do get stunned, you want to immediately turn your body away from the survivor, preferably towards a wall or obstacle so they can't hit your nose for critical damage. Lastly, when the timer is starting to get closer to 0, it's a good idea to check the center of town. Like we discussed earlier, it's a great idea for survivors to hide out in the center to prepare for the twins' arrival, so it's a safe bet to look for stragglers there. And that wraps up this guide. I hope you've enjoyed and learned something, and I hope to see you out there on Killer Klowns from Outer Space, the game.